The alarms hit, and I knew immediately that someone was going to die tonight. My name is Sergeant Kim Simmons, and I work 10 miles beneath the surface of Colorado in a place that doesn't exist on any map. The Deep Containment Division, that's what the official paperwork calls it, though we never see official paperwork down here. What we do see are things that make you understand why humanity invented the concept of hell in the first place. The red lights were spinning across my quarters when I jolted awake, and that metallic voice was already echoing through the reinforced corridors. Breach level 7, repeat. Breach level 7. All personnel to containment stations. This is not a drill. I'd been having the dream again. The one where I'm back in Kandahar watching Barrett, Private First Class Ernest Barrett, my best friend, laughing as he told me about his daughter's first day of kindergarten. That was 2 weeks before I transferred to this hole in the earth, before I learned that the real monsters aren't overseas. The emergency lighting painted everything the color of old blood as I yanked on my tactical gear. My hands moved on autopilot. Vest, ammunition, sidearm, the modified rifle we use down here loaded with rounds that cost more than most people's cars. Hollow point titanium tips, filled with a chemical cocktail designed to put down things that shouldn't be able to die. Through my door's reinforced window, I could see other personnel rushing past, faces tight with the kind of fear you only get when you know exactly what you're running toward. 2 weeks ago, during my routine patrol of Sector D, I'd noticed something wrong with the refrigeration systems. The temperature readings were fluctuating by degrees that shouldn't have been possible. I'd filed a report. Commander Sharp had dismissed it. System's old, Simmons. It acts up. Don't create problems where there aren't any. Now those problems were loose. I hit the corridor at a dead run, my boots hammering against metal grating. The facility's architecture was designed to disorient. Endless turns, identical hallways, doorways that led to nowhere. It kept the things we contained confused if they ever got out. Tonight, it just made me feel like a rat in a maze. The intercom crackled again. Subject 12F has breached primary containment. Repeat, the Hollow Men are loose in Sector D. All units converge on level 7. My stomach dropped. Not them. Christ, not them. I rounded a corner and nearly collided with Barrett. Seeing him there, alive and solid and real, sent a wave of relief through me. After I'd been transferred here, I'd pulled strings to get him assigned to DCD. If I was going to be in hell, I wanted my best friend watching my back. Simmons! His eyes were wild, but his hands were steady on his rifle. What the hell is Subject 12F? Something we should have incinerated the day they brought it in, I said. Stay close, stay quiet, and whatever you do, if you see something that looks human, assume it's not. We moved down the corridor in tactical formation. The alarms had stopped, replaced by something worse. Silence. The kind that presses against your eardrums, that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. The walls down here aren't like normal walls. They're 3 feet of reinforced concrete wrapped in steel plating, designed to contain things that can punch through car doors. But as we descended toward level 7, I could hear something that made my blood freeze. Scratching. Not random, but methodical. Purposeful. Scritch, scritch, pause, scritch, scritch. The sound echoed through the ventilation system, coming from everywhere and nowhere. We reached the staging area for level 7 to find it already crowded. Several soldiers, a handful of technicians, and Dr. Yolanda Menton, the facility's chief biomedical officer. She stood near the monitors, her face illuminated by their glow, and I saw something in her expression that scared me more than the alarms. Guilt. Status report, I barked. One of the techs looked up with eyes that had seen too much. The breach started in containment cell 12F at 0344 hours. Primary locks failed, then secondary, then the backup, all within 90 seconds. That's not malfunction, Sergeant. That's coordination. I studied the monitors showing Sector D. The cameras were grainy, but I could make out shapes moving in the darkness. Shapes that moved wrong, that bent at angles human bodies shouldn't bend at. Where's Commander Sharp? I asked. Dr. Menton's voice was quiet. He's already in Sector D. He said he needed to secure something before we could proceed with containment. Secure what? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I understood. Sharp hadn't gone down there to contain the breach. He'd gone because he wanted something. The lead monitor flickered, and suddenly we were looking at Corridor 7B. The emergency lighting cast everything in shades of red and black, and at first, I didn't see them. Then they moved. The Hollow Men weren't individual creatures. They were what happened when you took 12 human bodies, stripped them of everything that made them human, and stitched them together into something that served a single purpose: fill the hollow spaces inside themselves with the warmth they'd lost. They crawled along the ceiling, their bodies stretched and distorted, ribs protruding through skin sewn together with surgical wire. Their faces, God, their faces were the worst. Human faces stacked on top of each other, lips moving independently, whispering, "Fill the hollow, fill the hollow." Barrett made a sound beside me, halfway between a gasp and a whimper. "What did they make those from?" "Failed experiment from Project Lazarus, Dr. Menton said, her voice clinical. "They were soldiers once, volunteers for a genetic enhancement program. Instead, it stripped away everything that regulated body temperature, pain response, individual identity. They became collective, driven by a single imperative: to absorb heat, to consume warmth, to fill the emptiness inside." "How many were in that cell?" 37 bodies, configured into 3 separate colonies. On the monitor, one of the colonies was moving with horrible purpose. I could hear it now through the facility's audio system, that whisper multiplied by a dozen mouths. "Fill the hollow, fill the hollow." "We need to move," I said. "One tech stays here. Everyone else with me." Barrett grabbed my arm. "Simmons, what's the actual plan here?" He was right, but I'd read the files on Subject 12F. I knew that if they reached the lower levels, if they reached Sector C where we kept the real nightmares, this wouldn't just be a containment breach. It would be an extinction event. "The plan is we contain them before they reach the thermal vents on level 9, I said. "If the Hollow Men reach that much warmth, they'll metabolize, grow, possibly divide again." "And if we can't contain them?" Dr. Menton spoke up. "Then we implement Protocol Erebus. We seal level 7 and pump the entire sector full of liquid nitrogen. Everything freezes solid in under 2 minutes. Including any personnel still inside," I finished. The room went quiet. We had a time limit. Get in, contain or eliminate the targets. Get out. Or become permanent fixtures in the facility's deepest, coldest grave. I divided us into 2 teams. Barrett stayed with me, along with Dr. Menton and 2 soldiers. The others would set up a fallback position at level 8, ready to seal it if we failed. The descent from level 6 to level 7 took us through a transitional corridor designed with multiple checkpoints. The security was meant to keep things in, but tonight, it felt like we were locking ourselves inside a tomb. The temperature dropped as we descended. Not the pleasant cool of air conditioning, but something deeper, more invasive. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you understand what it means to lose warmth. One of the soldiers checked his scanner. Thermal signatures, multiple contacts, moving in formation. They're hunting. We reached the entrance to Sector D. Through the reinforced glass window in the security door, I could see the corridor beyond. The emergency lighting painted everything in nightmare shades, and there was something on the walls. Not scratches. Frost. Patches of ice spreading across the metal surfaces, growing outward from handprints. Dozens of handprints overlapping, desperate. The Hollow Men had been here, and they'd drained every bit of heat from the walls themselves. Dr. Menton moved beside me, studying the frost patterns. "They're searching for heat sources, body heat, electrical systems, anything that generates warmth. That's why they're spreading out. They're maximizing their search grid. Which means they're between us and whatever Sharp went down here to secure," I said. Barrett checked his rifle. "So we go through them." "If we have to." I pulled out a thermal flare. "But maybe we can be smarter." I explained the plan quickly. The Hollow Men were drawn to warmth, but they were also territorial. If we could create a heat signature large enough, we might be able to draw them to a single location, bottle them up. The thermal vents Dr. Menton had mentioned ran through a maintenance corridor just past Cell 12F. If we could lure the colonies there and seal the corridor, we'd have them trapped. One soldier pulled out more flares. "This better work, Sarge." "It will," I said, trying to sound confident. We moved into Sector D like ghosts, our breaths visible in the freezing air. Every sound seemed amplified, the creak of our gear, the whisper of our boots on metal grating. The first body was sprawled across the corridor floor 50 feet in. A guard. His eyes were open, staring at nothing, and his skin was blue-white, covered in frost. But the worst part was his chest. It was open, not torn or cut, but carefully spread apart, ribs pushed aside like someone opening a cabinet. Inside, where his organs should have been, there was nothing. Just an empty cavity, perfectly clean, perfectly hollow. Barrett turned away, gagging. They consumed his mass, Dr. Menton said quietly. Absorbed his biological material to fuel their own growth. Each victim becomes part of the colony. Tell me we can kill these things. Kill? No, they're already dead. But we can freeze them, starve them of heat until they go dormant. A sound echoed ahead, multiple voices in horrible unison. Fill the hollow. Fill the hollow. Brother, where are you? So cold, so empty. They were close. I signaled for the soldiers to move forward, flares ready. We rounded the corner, and there they were. 3 colonies, just as Dr. Menton had said. Each one was a nightmare of human anatomy gone wrong. Bodies twisted together, spines curved at impossible angles, limbs extending from torsos that shouldn't be able to support them. They moved like insects, skittering across walls and ceiling, their multiple faces all turning toward us. Fill the hollow, they whispered. Warm ones. Warm blood. Warm flesh. Fill us. Complete us. One soldier lit his flare and threw it down the corridor toward the maintenance junction. The brilliant red light bloomed, and immediately the colonies reacted. Their movements became frantic, excited. They scrambled toward the heat source, multiple mouths opening in expressions of hunger or joy or both. Move! I shouted, and we ran. The plan was working. The colonies were following the flare. We just needed to get to the junction's control panel, seal the corridor, and... Barrett screamed. I spun to see him on the ground, something wrapped around his ankle. Not one of the colonies. Something else. Smaller. Skittering, with too many joints and skin that looked sutured together from multiple sources. Offspring, Dr. Menton breathed. They've been reproducing. The thing holding Barrett was no bigger than a large dog, but its strength was incredible. It pulled him across the floor toward the junction where the 3 larger colonies were converging. I could see more of them now, dozens of the smaller creatures, emerging from vents and crawling along walls. I fired. The titanium round caught the offspring in what passed for its head, and it released Barrett with a shriek that sounded like metal tearing. But the shot had alerted the colonies. They turned away from the flares, and I saw recognition in their multiple eyes. New warmth, they whispered. Better warmth. Living warmth. Fill the hollow. They came at us faster than anything that size should move. One soldier opened fire, his rounds punching into the lead colony. It staggered but didn't fall, the holes in its body already starting to close, tissue knitting itself back together. The junction, I shouted. Get to the panel. We ran, firing as we moved, but there were too many. The offspring swarmed from every direction, their small bodies moving with mechanical precision. One soldier went down, 3 of them on his back, their small hands pressing against his vest, trying to find exposed skin. I grabbed one and threw it against the wall, felt its unnatural warmth through my gloves. It left a burning sensation on my palm. They didn't just absorb heat, they generated it somehow, used the stolen warmth to fuel their own metabolic processes. Barrett and I reached the fallen soldier, pulled him free. His vest was smoking where the offspring had touched it, the material charred black. But he was alive. Dr. Menton had reached the control panel. Her fingers flew across the keys, and I could hear the mechanical grind of the security doors beginning to descend. But the colonies were too close. They'd figured out what we were trying to do, and they were moving to block the exit. The lead colony spread itself across the corridor like a living wall, bodies stretching and flattening until it filled the entire space. Behind it, the other 2 colonies were doing the same, creating layers of flesh and bone between us and escape. Fill the hollow, they whispered. Stay. Join us. Be complete. Barrett looked at me, and I saw the same thought in his eyes. We weren't getting out of this. Not all of us. Then the lights went out. Not just the emergency lights, everything. Complete and total darkness. In that darkness I heard breathings. Not human breathing. Something else. When the lights flickered back on 3 seconds later, everything had changed. There was someone else in the corridor with us. Commander Sharp stood at the far end, but he wasn't alone. He was holding something. A case made of black metal with symbols etched into its surface. And beside him, towering over him like a shadow-given form, was the thing we called the Preacher. Subject 18B. 8 feet of restructured human tissue, bones protruding through skin at irregular intervals, its jaw locked in a permanent grin that showed every tooth in its oversized skull. The files said it had been created from the DNA of 37 serial killers. Instead, they'd created something that understood only one thing: worship through suffering. "I'm sorry, Simmons," Sharp said, his voice too calm. "But this was never about containment. This was always about release." The Preacher moved, and the world became screaming and pain. And through it all, the Hollow Men whispered, "Fill the hollow, fill the hollow, fill the hollow." Barrett grabbed my arm. "Simmons, look at me. Whatever happens next." But I never heard what he was going to say, because that's when the offspring reached him, swarming up his legs faster than I could react. Their small hands pressing against his skin, and Barrett started screaming. His eyes went wide with something beyond pain. His pupils dilated until they were solid black pools, and I watched those small bodies begin to merge with his flesh, watched his skin start to split and reform, watched my best friend begin to become one of them. "Fill me," Barrett whispered, his voice already layered with other voices. "Oh God, Simmons, I can feel them. I can feel all of them. They're so empty, they're so cold, and they're filling me up." I raised my rifle. My hands were shaking. Barrett looked at me, and for just a second, he was my friend again. Just Barrett, the man who told me about his daughter, who'd laughed at my terrible jokes, who'd said he'd follow me into hell. "Don't let me become one of them," he said. "Please. Simmons, brother, don't let me." The transformation was accelerating. His ribs were pushing outward, beginning to crack through his skin. His jaw was unhinging, making room for additional mouths forming in his throat. Dr. Menton put her hand on my shoulder. "Sergeant Simmons, we need to move. Now. I can't leave him. He's already gone. What's left isn't Barrett anymore." The thing that had been Barrett took a step toward us, and I saw others behind it. The colonies were reorganizing, incorporating the new biomass. And in the middle of it all, the Preacher stood watching with Sharp beside it, both of them smiling the same horrible smile. "Run," I said. We ran. Behind us, I could hear Barrett's voice, but it wasn't his voice anymore. It was dozens of voices speaking through his throat. "Fill the hollow. Brother, come back. Fill the hollow. Simmons, fill the hollow." We made it to the security door. Dr. Menton's code still worked, and it slammed shut behind us. Through the reinforced window, I could see them. The colonies, the offspring, the Preacher, Sharp, and at the front of them all, Barrett. His transformation was nearly complete now. His body had stretched, elongated, additional limbs sprouting from his torso. But his face was still recognizable. Still Barrett. And he was crying, bloody tears running down cheeks that were splitting. "Simmons," his voice came through the intercom, distorted but still his. "It hurts. It hurts so much. They're inside me, brother. They're filling all the empty places I didn't know I had. And it hurts. But it also..." His expression changed, became something ecstatic and terrible. "It feels complete. For the first time in my life, I'm not alone inside my own head. Can you understand that? To never be alone again?" "Barrett," I said, pressing my hand against the glass. "Fight it. You're stronger than this." "I'm not strong anymore," he said. "I'm not anybody's anything anymore. I'm part of something bigger now. Something that's going to fill all the hollow spaces in the world." The Preacher moved forward, placing one elongated hand on Barrett's shoulder. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the walls. Your friend understands what you do not, soldier. Humanity's greatest weakness is its isolation. Each person trapped inside their own mind, their own flesh. We offer something better. Unity. Completion. The end of loneliness. Commander Sharp stepped forward. He was holding the black case open now, and inside it, I could see something organic, like a spine made of bone that pulsed with its own internal light. The seed spine, Dr. Menton whispered. He actually found it. What is that? The source. The original template. We've been keeping it in Sector C for 2 years. The Hollow Men, the Preacher, everything we've been containing. They're all derivatives of that. But that's the original. And if Sharp activates it... The facility began to shake. Not just a tremor, but a deep vibration that seemed to come from the very bedrock. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. And through the window, I watched the seed spine begin to glow brighter. Its light spreading through the assembled creatures, connecting them in a web of pulsing illumination. Barrett threw his head back and screamed, but it was a scream of release rather than pain. His body convulsed, and I watched him complete his transformation. No longer human. Dr. Menton pulled me away. We need to get deeper. It's the only place with the equipment to shut down the seed spine's resonance. Where? She looked at me with true fear. Level 15, the pit below. It's where everything began, and it's where everything has to end. The path to level 15 would take us through the darkest parts of the facility, sections that had been sealed for decades, accessible only through maintenance shafts and emergency corridors that weren't supposed to exist. Dr. Menton led the way, her hands shaking but her pace steady. The 2 remaining soldiers followed, their weapons ready, though we all knew bullets wouldn't help against what was coming. What's really in the pit below? I asked as we descended through level 8. Dr. Menton didn't look back. We don't know. The facility was built on top of existing structures, something ancient, predating any known civilization. When they started construction in the 1950s, they found chambers carved into the bedrock, symbols on the walls, and at the very bottom, a shaft that went down further than our equipment could measure. The pit. They tried to explore it once, sent a team of 6 down with climbing gear and cameras. Only one came back up. He kept screaming about the mother of hollows and the birthplace of emptiness. He died 3 days later. His body just stopped, like something had drained all the warmth out of him from the inside. We reached level 9, and the temperature spiked. The thermal vents ran through here, massive pipes carrying heat from geothermal sources. And waiting for us in the red-lit corridor was a figure I recognized. Barrett. But not the Barrett I'd known. His transformation was accelerating, his body stretching, ribs visible through translucent skin, additional limbs sprouting at wrong angles. Yet his face remained, twisted in agony and ecstasy. Simmons, he said, voice layered with dozens of others. Brother, please, you have to understand. It hurts so much, but I'm also complete. For the first time, I'm not alone. Behind him, more transformed personnel emerged. The network was spreading, Sharp's activation of the seed spine creating new nodes throughout the facility. Dr. Menton grabbed thermal flares from her pack. The maintenance corridor. If we can drive them in and seal it, the heat will force them dormant. I'll do it, I said. I'm faster. No. She looked at me with determined eyes. You need to stop Sharp. I'll be the bait. Before I could argue, she was running, sprinting toward the thermal vent access. The transformed creatures gave chase, drawn to her body heat. Barrett turned to me, conflict visible in his distorted features. Don't let her die for nothing. Sharp's already at level 12. Once he reaches the pit with the seed spine, then I stop him before he does. Something like pride crossed Barrett's face. That's my brother. He stepped aside, clearing the path. Go. I'll try to hold them. Barrett, go! He roared. I ran. Behind me, I heard Barrett screaming at the other transformed, fighting his own kind to buy Dr. Menton seconds. My best friend, even as a monster, still protecting people. Dr. Menton reached the maintenance corridor, arms spread wide. Come on! The creatures poured in after her. I grabbed the manual seal lever and pulled. Heavy blast doors descended with a grinding roar. Through the narrowing gap, I saw Barrett. The others had turned on him, tearing at his body. He looked at me one last time, and his lips formed two words. Save them. The doors slammed shut. Dr. Menton dove through the emergency shaft just before the vents activated. Through the window, I watched the creatures collapse as heat overwhelmed them, but they weren't dead, just dormant, waiting. She climbed out, covered in soot. That bought us maybe 20 minutes before they adapt. We need to reach Sharp now. We descended to level 12. The walls here were different, carved from solid bedrock, covered in symbols that seemed to writhe when you looked at them. The air tasted ancient, like breathing inside a tomb, and we could hear it. A sound like breathing, coming from below. Deep, resonant, rhythmic. Something enormous, drawing breath after millennia of sleep. The pit is waking up, Dr. Menton whispered. We reached a massive chamber, circular, descending into darkness. Ancient stairs spiraled down its interior wall, and at the bottom, perhaps 200 feet below, I could see light. Not electric, something organic, pulsing, alive. Commander Sharp stood at the edge, the seed spine in his hands. He'd begun merging with it, tendrils of bioluminescent tissue spreading from the artifact into his body. "Simmons!" his voice echoed. "You made it. Good. You should witness humanity's transcendence." "Sharp! Don't!" Dr. Menton shouted. "You don't understand what's down there." "I understand perfectly." He smiled with serene madness. "The seed spine showed me everything. Thousands of years ago, something offered humanity a choice. Remain isolated, alone, or join something greater. Our ancestors were cowards. They chose isolation. They built this prison to contain the offer." "They built it to contain a plague," Dr. Menton said. "They built it because they were afraid of evolution." Sharp began descending the stairs. "But I'm not afraid. None of us need to be." I raised my rifle, but Dr. Menton grabbed my arm. "If you shoot him here, the seed spine falls into the pit. It'll still activate." "Then what do we do?" From her pocket, she produced a device, a detonator with a dead man switch. "There's a failsafe. Explosives rigged throughout the pit's entrance. We can collapse it, bury everything, Sharp, the seed spine, whatever's down there. But someone needs to get close enough to place the charges." "You'll die." "I know." She pressed the detonator remote into my hand. "But you won't. There's an emergency shaft behind us that leads to level 10. You'll have 45 seconds after I trigger it to get clear." "Dr. Menton, listen to me." She gripped my shoulders. "I helped Sharp access the seed spine. I ran the experiments that created those things. This is my fault. Let me fix it." Before I could stop her, she was descending the stairs toward Sharp, the explosive charges in her pack. "Yolanda?" Sharp turned, surprised. "You came to join us?" "I came to end this," she said. She tackled him. They tumbled down the stairs together, the seed spine flying from Sharp's hands. It clattered across the stone floor at the bottom, rolling toward the pit's edge. The breathing from below intensified. The light grew brighter. Something was rising. Dr. Menton scrambled for the seed spine. Sharp, half transformed, lunged after her. They collided at the pit's edge, grappling. And then I saw it. The mother below. Not the colony we'd seen in Sector D, but the true source. Something massive beyond comprehension, covered in eyes and mouths and appendages that shouldn't exist. The original from which all the Hollow Men, all the offspring, all the nightmares had been derived. She was emerging from the pit. "Now, Simmons!" Dr. Menton screamed, placing the charges. "Activate it now." My thumb found the trigger. Time slowed. I saw Dr. Menton's face, determined, unafraid, finally at peace. I saw Sharp's expression shift from rage to understanding, and I saw the mother below reaching for them with appendages that defied physics. I pressed the trigger. The explosion was deafening. The charges detonated simultaneously, not just at the bottom of the pit, but throughout its structure. The ancient stone shattered, collapsing inward. Dr. Menton and Sharp disappeared into the cascading rubble. The mother below's scream was a sound that made my ears bleed, a frequency that shouldn't exist. And the seed spine. I saw it for just a moment as it fell into the collapsing pit, its light flaring once, brilliantly before being swallowed by stone and darkness. But in that moment of brilliant light, I felt something. A touch. A connection. A piece of the seed spine reaching out, finding me, embedding itself somewhere deep in my chest. Not transformation, not yet. But a seed. Planted. Waiting. I ran for the emergency shaft as the chamber collapsed. The two soldiers were already there, pulling me through as the doorway crumbled behind us. We climbed through maintenance corridors as the entire lower level came down. Behind us, I could hear the facility dying, metal screaming, concrete pulverizing, and underneath it all, something else. A final scream from the mother below as tons of rock buried her. But it wasn't a death scream. It was a promise. We emerged on level 8, gasping, covered in dust. The facility's alarms had stopped. The emergency lights flickered and then stabilized. In the sudden quiet, we could hear nothing from below. "Is it over?" one of the soldiers asked. I wanted to say yes, wanted to believe we'd stopped it. But I could feel that warmth in my chest. That connection. That hollow place that wanted to be filled. "We need to get topside," I said. "Now." The ascent took another hour. We passed frozen security stations, empty corridors, and sealed blast doors. The facility felt dead, not peaceful, but empty. Hollow. We reached the surface elevator and rode it up in silence. When the doors opened, we stepped out into the Nevada desert at dawn. Behind us, the facility entrance had collapsed, the ground subsiding as the lower levels crumbled. 3 of us, from 200 personnel. We stood watching the sunrise, none of us speaking. My radio crackled with static, and for just a moment I thought I heard Barrett's voice, but it was just interference. Or was it? A military transport was already approaching, rotors cutting through the morning air. They'd been monitoring from a distance, waiting to see if anyone survived. As they loaded us into the helicopter, a hazmat team emerged, scanning us with equipment I didn't recognize. One of them looked at the readings and then at me, his expression hidden behind his helmet. "Sergeant Simmons," he said, "we need to quarantine you immediately." "Why?" He didn't answer, just showed me his scanner. There, on the display, was a heat signature. Not from my body, from something inside my body, centered in my chest, the seed that had been planted, growing. They separated me from the other survivors, placed me in an isolation chamber in the transport. Through the window, I watched the Nevada desert fall away beneath us, and I felt it pulse. Once. Twice. A heartbeat that wasn't mine. "How long?" I asked the doctor monitoring me. "We don't know," he admitted. "You're the first survivor we've seen with this kind of exposure. The others who made it out are showing similar signs, but yours is the most advanced." "The others? How many?" 47 personnel escaped before the collapse, all showing infection. We're tracking them down now. 47 pieces of the seed spine, scattered across the country. 47 seeds planted in human hosts, waiting to grow, waiting to connect, waiting to finish what Sharp had started. "Where are you taking me?" I asked. "Another facility, deeper than the Colorado installation. We need to study this, understand it, find a cure before—" He didn't finish, didn't need to. Before we all transformed, before the network completed itself, before the mother below, buried but not dead, found a way to reach us through the connections we carried inside us. I looked down at my hands. They looked normal, human, but I could see faint lines under my skin, not quite luminescent yet, but there, growing. The doctor's voice was quiet. "Sergeant, there's something else you should know. We sent a deep ground radar team to scan what's left of the facility. The pit. It survived the collapse. Damaged, partially sealed, but intact. And there's still something down there. Still moving. Still breathing." Of course it was. You can't kill something that old, that fundamental, with mere explosives and stone. The mother below was waiting, and through the seeds she'd planted in us, she could afford to be patient. The helicopter banked, heading east toward whatever black site they'd prepared. I closed my eyes and tried not to feel the warmth spreading from my chest outward. Tried not to hear the whispers starting at the edge of my thoughts. Tried not to remember Barrett's last words. Save them. But how do you save people from themselves? From the loneliness that made the seed spine's promise so seductive? From the human condition of isolation that made transformation feel like liberation? I opened my eyes and looked at my reflection in the helicopter's window. And for just a moment, I saw them. All of them. Barrett, Dr. Menton, Sharp, the Hollow Men, the transformed soldiers, all connected, all complete, all waiting for me to join them. Fill the hollow, something whispered in my mind. Brother, we're waiting, come home. The helicopter flew on through the dawn, carrying me toward whatever came next. But I knew the truth. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. They took me to a facility in Montana, 10 miles deeper than Colorado, carved into the heart of an extinct volcano. The walls were older here, predating modern construction by centuries. Someone had built something in this mountain long before the United States existed, and the military had simply added doors and electricity to what was already there. The isolation wing was reserved for us, the infected. 47 survivors from the Colorado breach, each carrying a piece of the seed spine growing inside us like a cancer that whispered promises instead of pain. My cell was 8 by 10 feet, reinforced glass on one side so they could monitor me constantly. Through that glass, I could see other cells, other infected, all of us waiting for the inevitable transformation. I'd been there 6 days when the whispers became voices. At first, it was just static at the edge of my thoughts. White noise that almost sounded like words. But by day 3, the words became clear. By day 5, I recognized the speakers. Barrett's voice, Dr. Menton's voice, Sharp's voice, the Hollow Men, the preacher, even the mother below. All of them connected through the network, all calling to the seeds planted inside us. Brother, come home, fill the hollow, be complete. We're waiting for you in the depths. Day 7. The first of us transformed completely. A technician named Rivers, 28 years old, engaged to be married, had a dog named Scout. I knew these things because we'd talked through the intercoms, trying to stay human by sharing our stories. It wasn't enough. They found him in his cell at 400 hours, his body restructured into something barely resembling human anatomy. His rib cage had opened like flower petals, each bone extending toward the walls as if trying to connect with the rest of us. His face wore an expression of absolute serenity. Before the guards put him in cryo-freeze, he looked directly at me. It's beautiful, Simmons. You'll understand soon. We're all waiting for you. The hollow aches, doesn't it? Let us fill it. I turned away, but his words stayed with me. Because he was right. The hollow did ache. Every moment, I felt that emptiness where the network had briefly touched me. By day 10, 3 more had transformed. The facility doctors threw everything at the problem. Experimental surgeries, radiation treatments, chemical cocktails that made us vomit blood. Nothing worked. The seed was rewriting us from the DNA up. How long do I have? I asked Dr. Sarah Chen, the physician assigned to monitor me. She studied her scanner, showing the thermal image of my chest. The seed had grown from a single point to a branching network spreading through my torso. When the lights were off, I could see it glowing faintly through my skin. 48 hours, maybe less. You're at 53% transformation. After 60%, it becomes irreversible. And then? Then you become like Rivers, part of the collective, but no longer you. 48 hours to remain Kim Simmons. That night, they came to my cell. Military officers in black tactical gear. No insignia, no name tags. The kind of people who solved problems that couldn't officially exist. Sergeant Simmons, we have a proposition. They showed me satellite imagery. Thermal signatures, 43 of them, moving across the Arizona desert in a coordinated pattern, circling a massive depression in the earth. The other infected are gathering at the original excavation site, where they first discovered the structures that would become the Colorado facility. This is the original pit, the one the ancient builders sealed. The mother below survived the collapse. She's calling to them. I stared at the image. Why tell me this? We tried bombing the site 3 days ago. Bunker busters, Moabs, everything short of nuclear. The infected absorbed the blasts, adapted. They're evolving, Sergeant. You're the only infected who's still fighting the transformation. That makes you our only option. He pulled out a syringe filled with something black and viscous. Experimental suppressant. Slows the transformation, buys you 6 hours. But the cost is extreme pain. Your cells fighting the infection in real time. And what do I do with those 6 hours? He produced a detonator. We've rigged the entire crater with shaped charges. You get in, place this final charge at the pit's bottom, trigger the sequence. Everything collapses. And if I fail, 43 infected make contact with the mother below. The seeds bloom fully. The network completes itself. Within 72 hours, continental outbreak. I looked at my hands. The bioluminescence was visible even in bright lights. Faint lines running under my skin like circuit boards made of living light. When do we leave? They prepped me in silence. Dr. Chen administered the injection directly into my chest, into the seat itself. The pain was immediate and absolute. Every cell in my body screaming simultaneously. I'd been shot, stabbed, burned, broken bones. This was worse. This was every nerve ending firing at once. "Focus, Sergeant!" Dr. Chen's voice cut through the red haze. "The pain means it's working. Breathe. Count." I counted. By 60, the pain had leveled off to merely unbearable. How long will this last? All 6 hours. I'm sorry, but it's the only way to keep you human long enough. They flew me to Arizona in a military transport. Through the window, I watched the sun set over the desert, painting everything gold and red. Beautiful. Like the world was on fire. We landed 10 miles from the target as night fell. They dropped me 2 miles from the crater's edge. I made the approach on foot, the desert night wrapping around me like a shroud. Above, stars filled the sky. Thousands of points of light, each one alone, separated by distances that made connection impossible. The crater appeared as darkness against darkness, and at its edge, silhouetted against the stars, I could see them. The infected. 43 figures standing in perfect intervals around the crater's circumference. Not moving. Not speaking. Just standing, facing inward. And they were singing. Not with their mouths, but through the network. A harmony that shouldn't be possible. Voices blending together into something more than the sum of its parts. Come home, brother. The hollow aches. Let us fill it. Let us make you complete. I walked past them, and none turned. They knew I was there. I could feel their awareness of me. But they didn't stop me. Why would they? To them, I was already one of them. Just confused, still fighting, but ultimately inevitable. The crater's interior was a spiral carved into ancient stone. The walls were covered in symbols I recognized from the Colorado facility, but these were the originals, deep, precise, untouched by time. A language by people who understood what they were trying to contain. I descended into darkness, my headlamp cutting a narrow beam through the black. The air grew warmer, carrying a smell like copper and earth and something organic I couldn't identify. And that sound, breathing, rhythmic, patient, growing louder with each step. At the bottom, perhaps 500 feet below the desert surface, I found the pit. The collapse had damaged it but not sealed it. Massive slabs of ancient stone had fallen inward, creating a chaotic jumble. But there was a gap, just wide enough for a human body. And through that gap, I could see light, bioluminescence. The same cold glow under my skin, but magnified 1,000 times. It pulsed in rhythm with the breathing. I squeezed through the gap, climbing over rubble that had last moved millennia ago. On the other side, the space opened into a chamber that defied rational architecture. It was vast, but the proportions were wrong. The walls curved in ways that hurt to look at, creating angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. And at the center, partially buried under rubble but very much alive, was the mother below. She was larger than anything I'd seen in the Colorado facility. So large, my brain struggled to process her as a single organism. Her body was covered in what looked like faces, thousands of them, each one watching me with eyes that recognized me, knew me, had been waiting for me. Child. Her voice resonated through the stone, through my bones, through the seed in my chest. You've come home. Finally. After so much suffering, so much resistance, you've come to be completed. I pulled the detonator from my pack. The explosives were already in place throughout the crater complex. All I needed was to place this final charge and trigger the sequence. I'm not here to be completed, I said. I'm here to end this. Her laughter was the sound of continents shifting. End me? Child, you carry part of me inside you. We're already connected, already one. Look at yourself. I looked down at my hands. The bioluminescence had spread completely during my descent. My entire body glowed with that cold light. The transformation was accelerating despite the suppressant. Minutes. I had minutes before I wasn't Kim Simmons anymore. They're coming, the mother below continued. The other 43. They'll arrive soon, and when they make physical contact with me, the network will complete itself. The seeds inside them will bloom fully, and through them, I will touch the world again. Fill all the hollow spaces. End all loneliness. It's not a gift, I said, assembling the explosive charge. It's the end of individual consciousness. And what has individual consciousness given you but pain? Her voices, she spoke with many, all layered together, took on something almost like sympathy. Your entire life has been loneliness, Simmons. Trapped inside your own skull, desperately trying to make others understand you and always failing. We can fill that ache. My hands shook as I attached the charge, not from fear, from the transformation. My fingers were lengthening, joints multiplying, skin becoming translucent. Barrett understood, the mother below said. Dr. Menton knew it too. That's why she hesitated before triggering the explosion. That moment of doubt, wondering if she was destroying salvation instead of damnation. Barrett's last words were, "Save them," I said, my voice distorting. Not, join them. Save them. Save them from what? From peace? From understanding? From never being alone again? I activated the charge. 30 seconds. But I couldn't move. The transformation had reached critical mass. My legs were fusing, my spine elongating, my consciousness fragmenting as the network tried to absorb me completely. You can't run, the mother below said. You can barely stand. Join us, Simmons. Stop fighting. Above me, I heard footsteps. The 43 infected were descending, coming home. I could feel them now. 43 minds, all connected, all approaching. 20 seconds. When they touch me, you'll join us whether you want to or not. The seed will bloom, and Kim Simmons will dissolve into the collective. So why resist? Why suffer these final moments alone? 15 seconds. My mind was fracturing, memories bleeding into each other. I could feel them all. Barrett, still present in the network. Dr. Menton, her final thoughts frozen. Sharp, existing now as pure ideology. They were all there, all waiting, all calling me home. It would be so easy to join them, to stop fighting, to let that hollow place finally be filled. 10 seconds. But then I remembered something. A conversation from years ago. Barrett and I in a bar in Kandahar, talking about his daughter. She asked me why people die. How do you explain death to a 5-year-old? What did you tell her? That death is what makes life special. If we lived forever, nothing would matter. It's the ending that gives the story meaning. The temporary things, that's what makes us human. 5 seconds. The temporary things. The connections we can't keep. The moments that don't last. That was it. That was what the mother below would take away. Not loneliness, but temporary connection. Not isolation, but meaningful individuality. 3 seconds. Barrett's daughter will grow up without him, I said, my voice barely recognizable. She'll feel that absence every day, That hollow space where her father should be. And it will hurt. But that pain, that emptiness, that's how she'll know he mattered. That their connection was real. 2 seconds. The hollow isn't a prison. It's proof. Proof that we loved. Proof that we connected. Even briefly, even imperfectly. You want to fill it. I want to honor it. 1 second. I triggered the detonator. The explosion was apocalyptic. Every explosive in the crater complex detonating simultaneously, creating a pressure wave that turned ancient stone to powder. The chamber collapsed inward. The mother below's scream was every frequency at once. The 43 infected on the stairs were caught in the cascade. I felt them die through the network, 43 lights extinguishing simultaneously. And the mother below, I felt her die too. Not quickly, not easily, but definitely. The network collapsed, all those connections severing, including mine. The transition was agony. Going from the edge of complete connection back to isolation felt like being ripped in half. Every part of me that had started to dissolve screamed as it was forced back into individual form. I don't remember crawling through the rubble. Don't remember the climb back up through the collapsing crater. Don't remember the extraction team finding me 200 yards from the edge. My body half transformed, my mind fragmenting. I only remember the silence. The awful, beautiful silence of being alone inside my own head again. They told me later that I was in a coma for 6 weeks. The transformation had stopped when the mother below died. Frozen mid-process like a video paused mid-frame. The doctors worked for months to reverse what they could. They managed to restore most of my human anatomy. Most, but not all. My hands still have too many joints. My spine is longer than it should be. And my eyes glow faintly in the dark. They call me a medical miracle. The only person ever infected by the seed spine to survive and return to something resembling human. But late at night, when I'm alone, I know the truth. Part of me didn't survive. Part of me died in that pit when the network collapsed. The part that connected. The part that, for just a moment, knew what it was like to never be alone. And I miss it. God help me. I miss it every single day. 6 months after Arizona, they released me. New identity, new life, pension, orders never to speak about what happened. I moved to a small coastal town in Oregon, got a job as a mechanic, rented a small house with a view of the ocean, tried to live normally. But normal is harder than it sounds when you've touched something beyond humanity, and then had it ripped away. Sarah, Barrett's wife, found me 3 months after I settled in. She showed up at my door one morning with Barrett's daughter. The little girl was 7 now. Still had that gap-toothed smile, but her eyes were older, sadder. She wanted to meet you, Sarah said. The man her daddy saved. I looked at this child, this proof that Barrett had existed, had mattered, had loved. And I saw that hollow space in her, the absence of her father, the wound that would never fully heal. He talked about you in his letters. He said you were brothers. We were. Mama says you were with him when he died. Did he know I loved him? And there it was. The question that haunted her. The connection she couldn't maintain. The temporary thing that had ended too soon. I could have told her the truth. That Barrett's final moments were agony and horror. That his last words weren't about her at all. But what good would that truth do? He knew, I said. His last thoughts were of you, making sure you'd be safe. That's all he cared about, she cried, and her mother held her mother, and I watched them grieve together for a man who died so they could remain individuals, remain themselves, remain beautifully, painfully alone in their own minds. After they left, I sat on my porch and watched the ocean. The waves came in, each one unique, each one temporary, each one dissolving back into the whole before the next one formed. Alone, connected, apart, together. The rhythm of existence. My phone rang. Unknown number. Sergeant Simmons, this is Dr. Chen. We need you to come in for a checkup. My condition is fine. We need to verify. Have you experienced any symptoms? Hearing voices? Feeling connected to others? Any unusual sensations? I thought about lying, about telling her everything was normal, that I was healing, that the infection had truly died with the mother below. But I'd spent too long in the military to be good at lying to people who were trying to help. Sometimes, I admitted quietly, late at night, when the world is quiet and I'm alone with my thoughts, I feel something, like static on a radio that's almost tuned to the right frequency. Like the network is still there, just out of reach. Like if I concentrated hard enough, if I really wanted to, I could touch it again. A long silence on the other end. When Dr. Chen spoke again, her voice had changed. Tighter, more urgent. You need to come in immediately. This is critical, Simmons. You're not the only one experiencing this. 12 other survivors from various facilities, people who were exposed but never fully transformed. They're all reporting the same symptoms, the same sensations, the same calling. I stood up from my porch chair, pacing to the railing. Below, the ocean continued its eternal rhythm. What are you saying? The network isn't dead, it's dormant, waiting, adapting. And we have reason to believe it's trying to rebuild itself using U-13 as nodes, as seed points for a new outbreak. The hollow in my chest pulsed once, as if responding to her words. I pressed my hand against it, feeling the faint warmth that never quite went away. What happens if it succeeds? If it rebuilds? Then we're looking at a new kind of outbreak. But this time it won't be violent. It won't be forced transformation and horror. It'll be subtle, seductive. The seed spine learned from what happened in Colorado and Arizona. It learned that force creates resistance. So now it'll offer connection to people who are lonely, isolated, desperate for understanding. And in a world where everyone feels alone despite being constantly connected through technology, where we're more linked than ever, but somehow more isolated. They'll accept it, I finished. They'll invite it in willingly. Exactly. People will think it's evolution, transcendence, the next step for humanity. They won't realize they're giving up their individual consciousness until it's too late. I looked at the ocean again, each wave coming in, dissolving, reforming, the eternal cycle of connection and separation, of joining and breaking apart, of being one with the whole, then becoming individual again. Dr. Chen, I said slowly, what if it's not about stopping it anymore? What if the real question isn't how to destroy the infection, but how to live with it? To accept connection without losing ourselves completely? To find some kind of balance between the isolation that defines humanity and the communion that the seed spine offers? That's incredibly dangerous thinking, Sergeant. You're talking about coexistence with something that fundamentally wants to dissolve individual consciousness. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only realistic thinking we have left. You can't put this genie back in the bottle, Doctor. The seed spine exists now. The knowledge of what connection could feel like exists in 13 minds scattered across the country. Trying to erase that, it's like trying to uninvent fire after we've learned to use it. A very long silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end, could almost feel her wrestling with the implications. Will you come in? She asked finally. Not as a prisoner, not as a test subject, but as a consultant. Help us understand what's happening, what it means, what we should do about it. I thought about Barrett's daughter, about the hollow space in her life, about how that emptiness was proof of love, proof that connection, even temporary, even painful, mattered. Yeah, I'll come in. I hung up and sat there as the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in colors that wouldn't last. Temporary beauty, momentary connection between light and air and water. The hollow ached in my chest. But now I understood it wasn't a wound to be healed. It was a space to be honored. A reminder that I'd loved, that I'd connected, that I'd been part of something, even if only briefly. We didn't keep monsters down there in the deep places. We kept ourselves human, and being human meant living with the hollow, learning to love it even. Because that hollow, that absence, that ache, that impossible yearning for connection we can never quite achieve, that was the price of consciousness itself. The price of being beautifully, tragically, perfectly individual. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth it. I went inside as night fell, alone with my thoughts, just like every other human being on Earth, isolated, separate, individual, free.